Hello everyone, Adivemi Great here again. So I was working on a project and I needed to integrate Paystack in Line.js. This is the one I just created, which I'm going to share with us today, and this was the existing one. So the issue with this is that it's just limited to JavaScript, and I'll show you what happens when I try to use it. So here is my project. I have this confirmation TS page that I needed to implement. And this was the way I went to add this. This actually worked due to some things. We are going to get into that. But let me revert back to how things are meant to be by default. So if I come back to the confirmation page, this is being imported from here, as we can see. However, if we decide to import this directly, so if I come back here and paste this here, so the issue here is that this would complain, and I'm pretty sure we don't want to have this red line on our code, obviously. That marks it as an issue. So we needed a way to fix this, and one of the recommendations was to install the types, which is something you would like to do sometimes, and it tends to work sometimes. So if I try to do this, so yarn install, or rather yarn add, -d. So it will say it can't find this. So the issue is that it can't find this particular package. And if we check online to see if we have a TypeScript version of this, we don't have it. So this is kind of limited to just JavaScript, and that works. So in order for me to actually still use it and avoid this error, I could revert back to what it was. So I created a JavaScript file, which is this Paystack-completion.js. And because it's a JavaScript file, I could do this. But this does not really work out of the box. There's still something you have to do within your TS config to actually allow this work. So this would work in a JavaScript environment, but importing it to your TypeScript environment would not work by default. So yeah, this works and it's fine. And if we come down to where it's being used, so if I find this, so it's being used here. And yeah, there's still a bit of a story here as well as to what exactly was the documentation expecting and what I eventually went on with. Okay. So now back to why this would not work by default. So by default, if you come back to your TS config, if you come to allow JS might not be available. So if we disable this and we save and we come back to confirmation, then this becomes an issue. So it means TypeScript does not allow JS import at this point, which is an issue. So to fix that, you can do this. Yep. So this now works. So at the end of the day, what I decided to do was, okay, I just want a TypeScript version such that I don't have to go through all this flow to perform this magic. And that's what we'll be sharing later. So I'm going to share with you how I'm able to create the TypeScript version and push to NPM such that it's now being used. So at the moment, I'm not using it, but I'm going to share that with you in a minute. So back to the PaystackPop. So if I come here, you'll find out that I'm using a new transaction here, whereas I have an access code param here. So according to the documentation, if we come back here, we have a resume transaction method, which is this. And the expectation for this is if we call to the requirements, so resume transaction, so this takes in an access code. And if we come to our code and we actually change this to POP.resume transaction, which by the way, you don't get IntelliSense because it could not identify the type, but we could copy this and try to use our information. So the issue with this is that you don't get all these extra parameters. So you don't get a way to confirm if the transaction was successful or if there was a cancel or if there was an error. So I'm guessing this was probably some mistake from Paystack's part, because technically you can still use new transaction that has all this information to resume the transaction, which is what I did here anyways. So putting all this in mind, I decided to create my own version, and I'm done. I already built it. This is the version I just created, PaystackInline.ts, and this is how you install it. So let's move on to using this instead of the original version. And probably before that, let me show you how this existing one actually works. So I can clear this and there. So here we have it here. So this is actually an extract from my work on Juice, and I was working on the subscription part. Don't mind me, don't really bother about the price so much, but obviously expect something nice. So let's assume the user wants to migrate to an expert version. So it confirms the whole situation and it takes you to the confirmation page. When you click on the confirm page, the pop-up comes out where you can perform your success, bank authentication, and so on. So this works. So I'm just showing you how the default works. So now let's install the version I just created. So if we come back to our code, we can close the server for now. So now we can add add. So PaystackInline.ts. Yep, so that's what we have. And now I can come down here. So this is a direct import from Paystack.ts. So PaystackInline.ts. So as you can see, this actually works out of the box. No squiggly line. Everything works because it's a TypeScript version. And if we come down here, the access code itself is not a parameter of new transaction. Instead, it's a parameter of resume transaction. So now we can actually resume transaction, providing our access code, and still go about handling our callbacks as we would naturally. So now with this in place, we can remove this entirely, and we are good. So let's test this again and see that it works. So yarn dev. So refresh again. That confirmation link is now invalid. So manage subscription, go to expert, switch to expert, confirm change. And if we make this again, we get the same thing. So that's just the preview of that. And now we can actually migrate to the expert version. Okay, so subscription is now valid and you are now within the expert subscription. And that works. So that's it about what eventually became the result. However, let's quickly go over how I built this so that in case you want to build something of such, you want to create an NPM package, it's actually relatively easy than you might think. All right, so here is our code for the Paystack inline, and all we have here is just this pure information. We have a tsconfig, which is this, and here we are allowing JS imports because I want to also control that particular issue here as well. So we have the tsconfig, quite simple. Then we have the readme that you can see on the npm package. Then we have the package.json, which is what you want to start with. So when you define your package.json, you can specify the name, which is this, the description, the main entry. So the main entry is the dist.index.js. Then the types is this as well. So when you build your project, which we can, so let's do that. Build. Okay, we can't do that because we need to install. So install. Let's wait for it. So installation done. Now we can build. And with the build done, we can come to the dist generator. You see the definition. So this is what really marks it as a TypeScript package because you get the definition as well. And that is what this is referencing here. Then we have the build script and other information. These are the keywords, other things we can deal with. So that's by the way. Let's go into the source itself. So just like I did with the project I shared with you earlier, so I did the same thing here. I'm still using the same official inline JS. So I pulled it in and I exported the PaystackPop here. So now if we come down to the index.js, I imported this here. So PaystackPop as original PaystackPop. Then I defined some types. So according to the documentation, if you come back to this, you see the options here. And from the options, I'm able to extract this. So I'm able to extract that this is the payment options, currency, first name, and so on. So all these are optional fields. Then I created an interface for the transaction options itself. So this extends the payment option because I'm making this a generic type. Then I created an interface just to align with what we have on the original documentation. Then finally, I defined the option for the resume transaction, which was the one I shared with you. So this extends the payment option, which gives it the ability to perform all the callbacks. And now we have the access code. So when you are creating a new transaction, an access code is not needed because an access code is needed when you started the transaction from the backend and you are continuing on the front end. However, for a resume transaction, obviously, you started it on the backend and you needed to continue on the front end. So that's about that. So with the types defined here, we can come back to the index. So imported the necessary types. Then define the interface for what we expect the pop to be able to, the methods the PaystackPop will be able to undo. So according to the documentation again, it can come down here. You see the methods it can undo, and that's the same thing I've referenced here. So it's loaded, new transaction, everything. So the only difference now is that IntelliSense will be available because all the options are defined and the response are defined as well. Then here is me defining the constructor. Here is me implementing my own new PaystackPop. So it implements all this behavior. So these are the behaviors I want it to perform. And on the constructor, I initialize both the original PaystackPop as well as the new one. Then I reference the original one here. So whenever we try to perform this loaded, I just call the original is loaded. The same thing with new transaction, I just call the original and send it the options that the user have provided. Now with the resume transaction, I'm still calling the new transaction because if you remember in the earlier part of the code, we were using the new transaction with the access token, which means it works. The only difference now is that with our new version, new transactions will no longer take access token. So you need access token when you are trying to perform a resume transaction. Then every other one goes well. Then finally, I exported this, then kind of assigned the type to it so that IntelliSense is established. And that was it. So after doing all these things, I can build. And when you build, you do npm login. So npm login will require you to log in. Then once you are logged in, you can now do npm. So once you do npm publish, this will push your code to the npm repo and it will be available. So yeah, I built this hopefully to allow those of us that are working with TypeScript and then needed to use the PaystackPop. I'm pretty sure most of us that are using it already find a way to go behind it, just like I did earlier. However, I think just having a package that is TypeScript and just works out of the box is better. And that was the whole point of this particular build and tutorial. So there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed the episode, kindly leave a thumbs up. If there's any question you have for me, kindly put it down in the comment section. I would be happy to answer your questions. Bye for now. I'll see you in the next one.